She departed from this world due to an allergic reaction, but what she found on the other side was something that no song could describe. Jesus welcomed her and, in a moment of revelation, showed her the 6 types of Christians that the devil takes the most advantage of. Get ready to hear this impactful story. My name is Elisa Cartman. I am 41 years old, and I live in Lyon, in the charming southeast of France. Before everything I experienced, my life was quite ordinary, or at least it seemed that way to those observing me from the outside. I worked as an occupational therapist in a physical rehabilitation clinic, dedicating myself to helping people who had lost their movements to rediscover autonomy and quality of life. It was a beautiful job, even rewarding, but also exhausting. Many people arrive there without faith and without hope. To be honest, I myself was starting to lose mine. Since my teenage years, I had been a Christian, growing up in a traditional church where I learned the fundamentals of faith. However, it was only at the age of 34 that I found a more vibrant community, with contemporary worship services, a praise band, and a much more welcoming atmosphere. I discovered the joy of worship, that intense emotion that music is capable of evoking. It was as if I could feel God's presence again, or at least that's what I believed. Although I wasn't a worship leader, I was always present at the rehearsals, suggesting songs, helping with the sound, and every now and then, I would even dare to lead the chorus. It was in that environment that I felt God's presence the most. When the band started to play, the lights would go out and the sound would fill the auditorium. It was as if a flame ignited inside me. However, no matter how much I smiled during the services, there was a deep silence within me that no one could perceive. A part of me still longed for something I couldn't identify. Could it be intimacy with God? Or perhaps a faith that wasn't based on songs or specific moments? At that moment, I still didn't have that answer. What I knew was that my life constantly balanced between exhaustion and escape. It was during one of those rare moments of pause during a spiritual retreat in the mountains of Annecy that everything changed. I just wanted to rest, take a deep breath, and reconnect with God. However, instead of finding the peace I was so desperately seeking that weekend, I encountered death. And through it, I discovered something much greater. The retreat took place in a restored ancient monastery, surrounded by majestic mountains covered in pine trees and immersed in deep silence. The schedule was simple but rich in meaning: morning devotionals, light hikes in the afternoon, and moments of prayer and worship at dusk. It was the second day of the retreat, a cold Saturday in March, which promised to be special. That morning, a strange restlessness took hold of me. Despite the blue sky and the beauty around me, there was something inside me that felt out of tune, as if my body sensed something that my mind could not yet comprehend. During the snack time, a table full of delights caught my attention: cakes, teas, and a variety of typical sweets from the region. It was then that I came across a little square that seemed harmless, a chocolate tart with a crunchy topping that promised to be irresistible. Without suspecting what was to come, I took 2 bites. Little did I know that that small piece was hiding peanuts. In less than 5 minutes, I started to feel my throat closing up, and the situation took an unexpected turn. I had faced allergies before, but nothing compared to that experience. My body went into a state of absolute panic. I started to sweat, lost control of my movements, and in an instant I collapsed on the floor of the chapel, where everyone had gathered to sing. Everything unfolded in front of a stunned crowd. I could see terrified faces and others pleading for help. Someone was rushing by with a first aid kit while they administered adrenaline and performed chest compressions on me. However, nothing seemed to have any effect. My vision began to darken at the edges as if a shadow were enveloping me. I remember the strange sensation of detaching from my own body. I know this may sound odd, but that's exactly how it happened. In one moment, I was there, struggling to breathe, trying to grasp the air. In the next instant, I found myself standing, watching my body lying on the ground. Surrounded by kneeling people and emergency doctors who arrived a few minutes later, I observed everything with remarkable clarity. I was able to hear the beeping of the monitor, or rather the absence of it. It was at that moment that I realized I had died. This realization did not bring me despair. On the contrary, it came with a peace so profound that I could hardly explain it. There was no fear, only a deep silence, distinct from the emptiness I felt in life. It was a silence that carried a presence, and it was in that serene space that he appeared. It was not like in the paintings or the exaggerated descriptions we usually hear. Jesus did not appear surrounded by explosions or trumpets. He was simply there, as if he had always been. Our eyes met, and in that moment, everything made sense. And in that gaze, there was everything. Love, truth, holiness, and something more, something that challenged me without needing to utter a single word. I knew that meeting was not just a reception, it was a calling. He spoke to me with tenderness, but his words carried a weight that cut through any excuse. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about worship, about praise, and about the music I so passionately defended began to crumble, and that was just the beginning. I can't explain with precision how I was transported from that place, where my body was already giving in to the ground, to where I found myself next. I didn't hear the sound of a tunnel, nor did I glimpse a light at the end of it. It was as if I had crossed an invisible curtain, and on the other side there was a new kind of existence, a reality more intense than anything I had ever experienced. Everything around me pulsed with life. The atmosphere vibrated with sound and light at the same time. It was as if the very essence of the environment was worshiping, not with words, but with frequency, rhythm, and presence, where no note was out of place. It was a place where heavy energy did not exist. Everything around was sacred, intense, light, and vibrant. It was then that I heard him. Jesus. He was just a few steps away from me, but his presence completely enveloped me. Even before I could utter a word, he was already looking at me with that penetrating gaze, capable of touching the deepest part of my being. It was as if all the layers I had built up throughout my life, the theologies, the justifications, the spiritual masks, were dissolving in front of him. He called me by my name, Elisa. It was such a simple moment, yet at the same time so powerful. When I heard my name, I felt that he knew everything about me. Not just my past, but also my intentions, my well-meaning mistakes, my unhealed wounds, and my sincere efforts, although often misguided. I tried to smile. I tried to defend myself, even to justify my love for music and my dedication during the services. But before I could say anything, Jesus, with a gentle voice, asked me, "Elisa, do you know what you have been offering to me as worship?" His words left me paralyzed. I wanted to respond that yes, that I had always made an effort, that I participated in the services sincerely, that music was my way of feeling God. But, in a matter of seconds, all of that fell apart. His gaze revealed to me that he was not interested in my performance. There was no accusation in his eyes, but a deep sadness, like that of a father who sees his children dedicating themselves to something that deep down holds no eternal value. "You offered me sounds that touch men, but do not reach the heavens." These words echoed within me, and in that moment I felt a shame that was not guilt, but a revelation. It was as if Jesus was showing me that despite all my sincerity, I had strayed from the true center of worship. It was then that he said something I will never forget. "Today I will show you the praises that hell possesses and that my church hardly sings anymore." He did not speak harshly, but with pain, like someone who longs for his people to return to what is true, to what has power, to what drives out darkness. And at that moment, everything around me changed again. The landscape shone in a way that I could never describe. Without needing to ask, I knew that Jesus was about to teach me something that was not just for me, but a calling, a mission. I had no idea how much this would change everything. After Jesus said he would show me the praises that hell possesses the most, but that almost no one sings anymore, I felt that I was about to see something that would transform not only my understanding of music but also the very heart of God. The landscape around us began to gradually transform, as if we were being led into a new dimension within that celestial reality. Suddenly, we found ourselves in front of a vast living room, resembling a library, but without books. Instead of shelves, long rolls of light floated in the air like living scrolls, each pulsating with sounds, colors, and an indescribable energy. They were spiritual records of songs. Jesus walked slowly among those rolls and looked at me with seriousness. He said, "These are the songs that have been sung in my name throughout the generations." My heart tightened. It was as if I were witnessing the sound history of humanity before the sky. For the first time, I understood that worship does not disappear after it ends. It leaves a mark. It is recorded not only in the heart of the one who sings, but before the very throne of God. Jesus approached one of the scrolls and touched it. Instantly, a song began to play. I recognized the melody. It was a modern, famous praise song that I had sung myself dozens of times with emotion. But there it sounded different. Weightless. Lifeless. As if it were hollow inside. It wasn't ugly, but empty. I couldn't feel God's presence in that melody like before. I looked at Jesus, confused, and he said, "Not all praise is accepted. Not every sound that speaks of me comes from me." These words tore me apart inside. "Elisa," he continued in a calm but firm tone, "the songs that move you but do not transform you. The lyrics that talk about me but do not carry me. The Father does not seek just beautiful sounds. He seeks worship in spirit and in truth." In that moment, he reached out his hand and another scroll opened. The sound that came was completely different, simple, almost rustic, but it carried weight, glory, presence. I felt as if I were being washed from the inside. That song was unfamiliar, but it seemed like my spirit had recognized it forever. This, Jesus said, was sung by an illiterate woman in a hidden room during the war, alone with her hands on her belly, praying for the children who did not return. This song shook the heavens. I cried because I understood that God does not measure worship like humans do. He is not impressed by production, harmony, or the number of videos. He listens to the spirit behind the voice, the heart behind the sound. Jesus continued to walk among the scrolls. Some shone with an almost unbearable intensity, while others were gray and dull. He explained to me, "True worship is not that which pleases the audience, but that which moves the Father." So he stopped, turned to me with a serious look, and said something that has never left my soul. "Satan does not have Christian music. He has true worship. That's why he invests so much to pollute, dilute, and distort praise, because where there is pure worship, there is presence. And where there is presence, there is power." I trembled because at that moment I understood that the praise that comes from our mouths is not just sound. It is spiritual warfare. It is a declaration of covenant. It is a sword or a distraction. It is perfume or noise. Jesus then told me that he needed to show me one by one the 6 types of praise that hell possesses the most, and that for this reason have been set aside by the modern church. The time of neutrality was over. The moment to choose which sound we are lifting up had arrived. When Jesus told me that he would show me the praises that hell has the most, I thought I would see big bands, famous ministries, songs that exploded on streaming platforms. But what he showed me completely shattered my human logic. The room of living scrolls disappeared, and in the blink of an eye I was faced with a new scene, as if I were observing the world through a celestial window. I saw a small, dimly lit room where a young African woman was kneeling on the dirt floor. She was singing softly, without instruments, without elaborate melodies. The words did not rhyme. It was just her and God. But there was a glory in the air that made me tremble. I felt as if the very sky was bent in that place, as if all of creation was paused, listening. Then Jesus said, "This is the worship inspired by the Spirit." I couldn't hold back the tears. That girl had no musical training, didn't follow trends, nor was she part of a renowned ministry. But the sound that came from her mouth was born straight from her spirit. It was raw, pure, true, and it invaded the spiritual world with authority. "Elisa," Jesus explained, "there are Christians who sing to feel something. Others sing to be heard. but those who truly touch me are the ones who sing because they are filled with me." He then led me to another scene, an elderly man in a dark cell, singing with a hoarse voice, even amidst pain and imprisonment. His eyes were closed, and he adored as if nothing else existed. Every word he sang seemed to be written with fire in the air. Jesus used the following phrase: "This man does not sing because he is free. He sings because he knows that I am greater than any prison." Inspiration does not come from the environment. It comes from the Spirit. Jesus then took me to a service in a simple church in the countryside of South America. A group was singing a song I had never heard before. It wasn't commercial or technical, but there was so much anointing in that place that it felt as if the angels were singing along. Notice, Jesus said, it's not the arrangement, it's not the voice, it's the origin. What is born of the Spirit carries life, healing, liberation. And that's why hell has these songs, because they carry my presence. I remained silent, contemplating all of that. Suddenly, I realized how many times I had sung just for the sake of singing, how many times I sought emotion instead of inspiration, how many times I repeated memorized lyrics without even noticing if my spirit was connected to what I was saying. The true worshipers, Jesus continued, are like hidden springs in the desert. They sing even when no one is watching, and when they sing, they water dry places, not with performance but with presence. Then he pointed at me, not with condemnation but with love. "You have also sung like that, Elisa, when you were alone, crying in your room. Do you remember that song you improvised with your eyes closed, not worrying about who would hear it?" My heart broke. I remembered. That had been real, more real than all the rehearsals and public ministrations that came afterward. Jesus concluded, "Hell has the sound that arises in secrecy because it cannot be manipulated. It does not depend on applause, cannot be sold. It carries the seal of eternity." In that moment, I understood that singing inspired by the Spirit was not a skill, but a surrender, a deep yielding, an alignment between the heart and heaven. This was what I no longer saw in modern worship, and this was what Jesus was calling me to restore. Deeply moved by the scenes that Jesus had shown me, those hidden, pure acts of worship born from the Spirit, I thought I had already understood the essence of true praise. But Jesus looked at me with that gaze that only He has, and said, "This was just the beginning. Now I will show you something that the enemy hates even more intensely, the praise rooted in my word." Immediately, everything around us began to change. The landscapes floated before my eyes, as if time were being rewound. I found myself in front of a small group of people gathered in a damp basement, with Bibles open on their laps. It was a country where religious persecution was strong. They had no instruments nor freedom, but every song they sang was made exclusively with verses. Literally, they sang the Bible. Jesus pointed to them and said firmly, "These are warriors. Hell cannot stand when my word is sung." In that moment, I understood something I had never stopped to think about. There is a difference between singing about God and singing the truth of God. Many songs talk about feelings, about subjective experiences, about the desires of the heart, and there is nothing wrong with that up to a certain point. But when the music is built upon the scriptures, it carries another authority. I saw a woman on her knees, her face bathed in tears, slowly singing Psalm 23. Each verse seemed to come from her innermost being like a sharp sword. When she arrived at the part where I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, the spiritual atmosphere around her trembled. Literally, I felt it. "Notice, Elisa," Jesus asked in a grave voice. "Emotions can be manipulated, but the word is unchangeable. When my word is sung with faith, it becomes a decree." In that moment, he showed me the opposite. I saw a packed worship service, a well-equipped band, colorful lights, people crying, but the music they played was filled with beautiful phrases, yet empty. It seemed profound, but it lacked a biblical foundation. Then Jesus said something I have never forgotten. The lyrics that please men evoke emotions. The lyrics that please heaven transform. I recalled how many times I myself chose songs because they touched me emotionally. How many times I rejected biblical songs because I found them old, harsh, or repetitive. But there, in His presence, I realized how I had exchanged foundation for sensation. The Word of God is not just meant to be read. It comes alive when sung with faith and reverence. It opens heavens, breaks chains, heals wounds, and dethrones lies. Jesus then took me to a children's room. It broke my heart. A small group of 6 or 7-year-olds was singing memorized verses like simple little songs. But what impacted me was what was happening around them. Angels drew near, gently touching their heads, and demons that had once haunted those family homes were expelled as if they were being swept away. The song, sung by a child, has more power than an entire show without spiritual roots, Jesus said, with tear-filled eyes. He continued teaching me. The devil does not fear poetic phrases, but he fears when my children sing, "I will not fear because you are with me." He retreats when he hears, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He cannot stand the truth sung with faith. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to keep going. Next, Jesus reminded me of something that seemed so obvious, but that I had never applied to worship. It is written that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. So, why are so many singing what feeds the feeling but not the faith? I was left speechless. I looked inside myself and realized how accustomed I had become to vague lyrics about love, grace, and victory, but that rarely grounded themselves in Scripture. It was all diluted, shallow, adapted to the taste of the generation. But there, in the presence of the living Word, I realized when we sing the Word, we sing Christ Himself. Music based on the Bible is like a double-edged sword. It not only touches the worshiper, but also cuts through the darkness. She not only moves you, but she heals. She not only cradles, but she awakens, and hell trembles. Jesus then approached me, placed His hand on my shoulder, and said tenderly, "Go back and teach this, Elisa. Go back and say, do not sing only what pleases the ears. Sing what sustains the faith. Sing the truth." In that moment, I understood that the calling He was giving me was greater than music. It was about restoration. It was about reminding the church that worship is not entertainment, it is warfare, and that the most lethal weapon in the spiritual battlefield is the song sung with a heart full of the Spirit. After Jesus showed me the power of worship inspired by the Spirit and rooted in the Scriptures, I thought I had already understood what made worship true. But then He led me to a third revelation, and this one, I confess, stirred a hidden pride that I didn't even know I still carried. Now we were in an ancient time, built of stone, where some people gathered to sing. There was no technology, no microphones, no stage. The wooden benches creaked, the floor was cold, and the light coming through the windows created soft patterns on the ground. The silence was deep, almost sacred. So without rehearsal, without introduction, they began to sing. The sound was simple. No voice stood out. There were no complex harmonies. But what filled that space was something I couldn't name immediately, until Jesus whispered, "Reverence." That word pierced my chest like a silent lightning bolt. Reverence. Something I no longer saw in modern worship. Something that, if I were to be honest with myself, no longer existed even within me when I sang. I realized there, with tears in my eyes, that many times I had confused enthusiasm with worship and reverence with freedom. Jesus then explained to me, "Hell fears the Christian who sings with fear in their heart, because those who sing with reverence are aware of who I am." He took me to another vision, a large church packed with people, vibrant lights, an LED screen, smoke on stage, and a highly skilled band. People were jumping, shouting, and raising their hands with enthusiasm. But when I looked with spiritual eyes, I realized that true worship was missing. I realized that I was witnessing a spectacle, but there was no fear, nor the awareness of God's holiness. Jesus, with sadness in His eyes, said to me, "They sing about me as if I were just another one among them." My heart sank as I reflected on how many times I myself chose songs based on what energized the congregation, what excited and uplifted the atmosphere, instead of focusing on what truly revealed the majesty of God. So, Jesus led me to a Bible passage that seemed to be written in the air. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. He looked into my eyes and said, True joy in worship comes from reverence. When you know who you are standing before, everything changes. The voice, the posture, the intention. In that moment, I found myself kneeling, unable to stand before him. I realized that this was the problem. We have become too accustomed to the presence of God, losing the awe, the sacredness. We transformed the altar into a stage, praise into performance, the holy into the ordinary. Jesus then showed me another scene, an elderly lady at home, with an open Bible beside her and a radio playing an old song. She didn't have a beautiful voice. She sang softly, with her hand over her chest, but each word was delivered like an offering on the altar. It was slow, simple, and powerful. This, he said, is worship with reverence. Hell hates her because she doesn't seek applause but my face. I remained silent. The truth was harsh but liberating. He continued, Reverence is not religiosity. It is not coldness. It is the awareness of my holiness. It is knowing that I am God and that you are before the throne of the Most High. In the last scene you showed me, I saw a young and vibrant church singing freely. But there was something different. Even amidst laughter and modern instruments, there was reverence, sincere tears, and hearts inclined. Jesus told me, it's not about style, but about posture. It's not about the rhythm, it's about surrender. With these words, I understood that the problem wasn't the drums, nor the chords, nor the microphone, it was the heart. When the heart is placed at the center, worship becomes performance. But when the throne of God is the center, everything bows down, even the music. Jesus ended with a phrase that marked me forever. The worshiper who sings with reverence attracts my presence, and where my presence dwells, the enemy does not remain. It was then that I understood why hell fears this type of Christian. Where there is reverence, there is authority. After showing me the power of reverence in worship, Jesus remained silent for a few moments, a dense and holy silence, as if the entire heaven was about to reveal something that required complete attention. So, with a firm voice, he said, Now it's Lisa. I want you to see the praise that not only attracts my presence, but also drives away the presence of darkness. In that very moment, the scene around us transformed. I found myself in front of a damp cell, somewhere in the world that I did not recognize. There were two people sitting on the floor, with visible wounds on their wrists and ankles. They were trapped, exhausted, but they began to sing. The voice was weak at first, almost a whisper, but those words carried something that transcended suffering. They did not sing to escape. They sang because they knew who sustained them. They did not ask for liberation. They declared victory. As they sang, the spiritual atmosphere began to tremble, as if that prison could no longer contain the glory that was forming in that place. They are fighting, Elisa, Jesus said. Not with weapons, but with worship. I was paralyzed. I had never seen a praise like that before. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't gentle. It was a spiritual cry, wrapped in faith. Each note seemed to hit the invisible like a precise arrow. Then I realized they were winning battles that no one could see. Jesus took me to other scenes, a mother alone singing in the midst of a marriage crisis, with tears falling on the pillow as she whispered praises. A middle-aged man, with a terminal illness, lying in a hospital bed, still praising the Lord. A small group of young people in a dark alley, praying softly and singing, even knowing they were being threatened because of their faith. These praises, Jesus said, are spears in the battlefield of the Spirit. They not only resist, they advance. I then understood that there are songs that heal, songs that comfort, but there are also songs that fight. Worship as warfare, Jesus explained, is not about shouting louder, but about singing with spiritual authority. It is when the worshiper does not sing for themselves, but against the darkness. I remembered how many times I participated in lively services where victory, conquest, and breakthrough were discussed. But it all sounded more like jargon than conviction. It was just enthusiasm without direction. emotion without discernment. But there, seeing those real people in real scenarios, I realized what Jesus meant. True praise in warfare arises from total dependence on God, sustained by the Word and by faith, not by emotions or formulas. Jesus then took me to the Bible. Without needing to open the scriptures, they simply appeared like light before us. Around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly, a great earthquake occurred. It wasn't the volume, Jesus said. It was the spirit with which they sang. Their worship opened the cells. The enemy could not withstand it, because where there is true praise, there is divine intervention. So he looked at me, more seriously than before. Hell fears this kind of Christian, Elisa, the one who sings even when wounded, the one who declares who I am even while crying, because every note sung in faith during the battle opens breaches in the kingdom of darkness. I stood there in silence, digesting everything. I remembered how many times in my life I chose to remain silent in difficult moments. How many times I thought it wasn't the right time to sing because the situation was too heavy, and I understood. These were precisely the best times to praise. Jesus concluded, "Teach this to my people. Teach them to sing in the valley, not just on the mountain. Teach them to use praise as a sword, not just as a melody." And in that moment, I understood. To praise is to resist. To praise is to fight. To praise is to survive. That is why Satan hates it so much when someone continues to worship, even when everything around them says it's all over. Because in that type of worship, there is a power that no demon can withstand. After showing me the explosive power of praise as spiritual warfare, Jesus remained silent for a few seconds. His eyes were fixed on me, as if probing the most hidden places of my heart. I knew that what he would say next would not be easy to hear, but it would be necessary. "Now, Elisa," he said with a firm yet loving voice, "I need to show you the kind of praise that has been most imitated but rarely has been true." Even before the new vision formed around us, my heart already ached, as if it knew where it was about to touch. The image that emerged was of a large stage at a Christian conference, bright lights, giant screens, and in the center, a talented singer, holding the microphone as if it were a trophy. Her voice was impeccable, the music captivating, and the audience surrendered. People were raising their hands, some were crying, but something was bothering me. I looked and didn't feel the presence of God. Then Jesus said, "She is singing about me, but she is not singing to me." Those words cut through my soul. "That is the sound that pleases the ego," he continued, "but it does not touch the heavens." The next scene hit me even more deeply. It was a recording of a cult of which I had participated years ago. There I was, with the microphone in hand, leading the worship, my face smiling, my voice in harmony with the band. Everything seemed right, but looking back with the eyes of now, I realized that much of what I did that day was not for God. It was for the people to be praised, to feel useful, to avoid making mistakes, to impress. My legs weakened. Jesus approached and with extreme compassion said something that revealed, "When you sing thinking about how you will be received, you have already received your reward." He then showed me another group, a couple with small children at home. The wife sang softly while washing the dishes, and the husband held a baby in his arms. They sang an old hymn. There was no audience, there was no aesthetic beauty, but there was something powerful: intimacy. "They are singing for me," Jesus said with shining eyes. "They do not expect applause. They do not seek visibility. They just want my presence." I then saw anonymous people in small churches, singing in hospitals, in simple homes, sometimes out of tune, sometimes forgetting the lyrics, but singing with all their hearts directed toward the throne of God. And I realized, that was the sound that rose like a pleasant perfume. "Hell," Jesus continued, "does not fear beautiful music. It fears the praise that ascends like incense. Because that praise is not human, it is spiritual." The next revelation was even more painful. Jesus showed me how in many churches, worship had become a showcase. Ministering had become synonymous with performing. People applauded the singers as if they were artists. And in the end, the service would conclude and no one would remember the name of God, but everyone would remember the name of the vocalist. Elisa, he told me, looking deeply into my soul, the heart of the worshiper should not desire to be recognized, but to make the Father known. I was left speechless, because there, before him, I saw how my heart had become intertwined. Through the times, I worried more about the tone than about the truth. The times I focused more on hitting the right note than on breaking my pride. Then, with love but without beating around the bush, he said, "True worship gives me glory. Performance steals it." He finally took me to a last scene. A crowd singing in unison, a simple, repetitive song without technique but with sincere tears. And I saw above them, as if it were a golden smoke rising straight to the sky. It was accepted. It was received. And I understood. To sing for God is to sing without ulterior motives, without competition, without comparison, without spectacle. It is to sing for a single audience, the Lord himself. Jesus concluded, "This type of worshiper hell cannot manipulate because he does not sing to please men, nor to feed himself. He sings because he loves me." And there, with his face to the ground, unable to say anything, he could only think of one thing. I want to sing like that again. Only like that. I had seen so much on that journey, and with each revelation, a part of me was transformed, confronted, and healed. But Jesus told me that there was one last type of praise that hell fears, and for that reason it is one of the most fought against in our days. "Elisa," he said seriously, "now I will show you what happens when a Christian decides to sing with holiness, set apart from the world, without mixture." At that moment we were transported to a dark place. It wasn't a place of darkness like hell, but a kind of spiritual limbo. I saw thousands of voices echoing familiar songs, lyrics with the name of Jesus. But something was wrong. The sound seemed heavy, confusing, as if something was contaminating the melody. Jesus pointed and said, "This is the mix. Songs that were born with a holy purpose but were shaped by the culture of this world. They copied the form, inherited the noises, and forgot the essence." My heart tightened. I understood what he meant. It was as if the church was trying to attract the world by imitating the world, thinking that this purified the sound. But the sky did not recognize those notes. They were distorted echoes, noises with a spiritual fragrance but without sacred roots. "Holiness is not a sound," Jesus said. "It is a spirit. It is the decision to separate what is mine from everything that is common." I then saw the image of young musicians composing praises in studios that, hours earlier, had been used to produce explicit secular music. The same rhythms, the same arrangements, only the lyrics had changed. And when these songs were presented in the services, they seemed powerful, but spiritually they had no authority. "Hell does not have adapted music," Jesus explained. "It only has consecrated praise." Then he took me to one last vision, an ancient church where simple instruments were used, guitars, flutes, pure voices. The people's clothing did not draw attention, the environment was sober. But when they began to sing, it was as if the walls trembled, not from volume, but from presence. The sound that came from there was holy. And I understood. Holiness is not isolation, it is intentional separation. It is not to offer God something recycled from the world. It is to give something exclusive, dedicated, pure. Jesus looked at me with deep compassion and said, "Holiness is the perfume that hell cannot stand because it carries my DNA. And when my children sing with holiness, the heavens open and the demons fall silent." I then remembered the Old Testament, the Levites, the utensils of the temple. Everything was set apart, consecrated, touched by common hands. Now it made sense. God never changed. He still demands separation, not as religiosity but as an expression of love. "Do not give me recycled songs," Jesus said firmly. "Offer praise as if you were presenting a sacrifice on the altar, because that is exactly what it is." He approached me one last time. His eyes were serene, yet full of authority. "Come back, Elisa. Tell my people that the time of mixing is over. What is holy needs to be separated. What is mine needs to appear with me." At that moment, Something within me aligned. I understood with all my soul that holiness is not about rules but about belonging, and that holy praise does not come from technique, but from surrender. There, before him, all I could say was, "Lord, sanctify me, until the sound of my voice truly belongs." So everything started to fade away. The light was dissipating, the presence of Jesus remained, but the environment began to feel familiar again. I heard voices in the distance, screams, people crying, the pressure in my chest, a flash of light. And in an instant, my eyes opened. I was back. The face of a paramedic was close to mine, people were holding my hands. I heard prayers crying. I took a deep breath and my first word was just one, holy. Because after everything I saw, I could no longer sing without fear, without reverence, without surrender. I returned changed with a mission. And since that day, I have been repeating this wherever I go. Hell does not fear music, hell fears holiness. Hell trembles when the church sings as if it already belongs to heaven. What a fascinating and transformative story. The Bible teaches us in John chapter 4, verse 23, that the hour is coming, and it is already here, when true worshipers will turn to the Father, worshiping Him in spirit and in truth. It is a special moment, as the Father seeks those who worship Him in this way. I sincerely thank you, Elisa, for providing us with such an intense and challenging experience. And to you who have accompanied us this far, may the blessings of heaven illuminate your life, your home, and your voice. Until the next video,